This is the Neoliberal Round podcast. On a quick note, separation of powers is a facade. Separation of powers is a facade. I'm Renaldo McKenzie, the creator and host of the Neoliberal Round podcast and YouTube channel, the author of Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance. And today's on a quick note, we discuss the fact that separation of powers seems to be a facade. A blog that is available in the neoliberal blogs at renaldocmckenzie.blogspot.com. But what is going on in America? What is going on in America? So Donte, I have a new blog that I just published in the neoliberal blogs at renaldocmckenzie.blogspot.com, entitled "Separation of Powers is a Facade." Separation of powers is a facade. Yeah, separation of powers is a facade. And by the way, this is a quick episode of the Neoliberal podcast entitled "On a Quick Note." Usually we probably daily or weekly, or probably monthly, we have a quick note, but the note is very short, terse, but powerful, palpable, and potent. And today's quick note is entitled "Separation of Powers is a Facade." It's the title of a short blog that I just published. And by the way, when we talk about separation of power, there's a separation, and if you look constitutionally, there's a separation between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The legislature makes up the Congress, yes, which includes the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then you have the executive, which makes up the president, and then you have the judiciary, which includes the Supreme Court and all the courts underneath that. Yes, that's the and each of them they are co-equal branches of government. No branch holds more power than the other. That is the Constitution of America. That's the U.S. Constitution. And earlier, the Speaker of the House, who is a Republican, the Speaker of the House, came out and threatened the courts, threatened the judiciary, threatened the judicial branch. But he did so on behalf of the executive branch. This is the legislature. The legislative branch threatened the judiciary on behalf of the executive branch. So, because the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is part of the legislature. And one of the senior members of the legislature, he's the Speaker of the House. In fact, I think he's the third person in line to the presidency, or the second person, whatever the case is, after the vice president. I think it's after the vice president is it's either the Secretary of State. I think after the vice president, the Speaker of the House is somewhere there. And earlier today, the Speaker of the House, who represents the legislative branch, threatened the judiciary because Mike Johnson feels as though. But okay, let me tell you what's going on. Earlier today, there is a lower court, a federal court judge, or a district court judge, is blocking or challenging the Trump's administration use of the Alien Act, which is a wartime act, okay, used to deport persons from certain countries without giving them due process. So there is an act that allows the U.S. government to disregard due process accorded to human beings based on their human rights in extraneous cases, situations such as a war. The judge, the lower court judge today, what challenged Donald Trump's administration in terms of their unilateral deportation of and treatment of aliens or internet or foreigners. I understand that what they're doing is that they're picking up people and they're deporting them as quickly as possible, and that the judge had blocked it or something of the sort, but they're trying to go around that. So Mike Johnson today got up to challenge that any judge that is blocking or preventing Donald Trump from doing so and holding him, well, that is threatening to defund or take away federal funding. So therefore, which led to the conclusion today, which led to the title of today's on a quick note, which is not really, it's becoming long and drawn out now. But the blog, a separation of powers is a facade. You understand where I'm going with this? So I asked the question, what is going on in America? What is going on in America? Speaker Mike Johnson is threatening to withhold funding from district courts for making a ruling that challenges the president. He's threatening to withhold funding from district courts because district courts are making a ruling against the president. Now, if the president, and I'm going to challenge Mike Johnson. I'm going to say, if the president disagrees with a lower court judge, he must appeal. Do you agree with that? If the president disagrees with a ruling of a lower court judge, should he not appeal? This is like the process. You appeal, yeah. We have a system in place that should work, unless when it works against the powerful, they can withhold money and use their dogs, who aren't supposed to be dogs, but men, yes, of a different branch. That means, so therefore, so I've come to the conclusion that we do not have any separation of powers in actuality. If politicians can decide to withhold funding from another branch, from the judiciary. There is no way an attorney would make such irresponsible statements threatening the institution that has been constitutionally entrenched and has given him his authority. And by the way, Mike Johnson is an attorney. And I'm saying that there's no way an attorney of his pedigree would make such irresponsible statements threatening the institution that has been constitutionally entrenched and has given him his authority. Speaker Mike Johnson, must have been threatened by Trump. And that's what I'm saying. There is no way he could make such callous and irresponsible statements. Okay? Speaker Johnson must have been threatened by Donald Trump, whose support he needs in order to keep his job as Speaker. Because there is never a time, if there's ever a time that the Speaker's job is threatened and is vulnerable, is this time. The Speaker Mike Johnson is not the Speaker, but the press secretary who speaks for the president. And his position is vulnerable. We've seen that. Okay. So then there's no separation there either. If the Speaker and the House are elected by the president, and I use the word elected in inverted commas, I put it in inverted commas, quote, elected. There is no separation of power if the Speaker and the House are elected by the president. Because it seems that the president feels as though he has the ability to tell Americans not to vote for someone because they are going to follow him. He believes that he has the backing, he has the support, he has the favorability. And I'm telling Americans today, do not allow the president to feel as though he has more power than anybody else in this country. That's part of the problem. He feels as though he can go and tell somebody to do something. If they don't do it, he can tell the people don't vote for them and they're not going to vote for him. Speaker Mike Johnson, we've seen it. His job is very shaky. He's 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 a couple votes away from being the speaker. His job is vulnerable. Every single day, the speaker's job may be no more. Just as his predecessor. And he's only there under the good graces of Donald Trump. I thought he was elected by the people. So there is no separation between the judiciary and the legislature. And there's no separation between the legislature and the White House. Based on all of this. Playhouse, dolly house of a show. Yeah, the president parading another car, red Tesla in front of the White House. It looked awful, pathetic, and pitiful. This great America, okay, showing favoritism for one person's car over another. Absolutely. Anyways, nevertheless, Johnson's statements are unconstitutional. They threaten the legal institution that has given him his authority. His authority. That has given him his license. And therefore he should be disbarred. Let me say that again. Johnson's statements are unconstitutional, threatens the legal institution that has given him his law license, and therefore he should be disbarred. Johnson has no respect for the separation of powers and the authority of the justices and the people's court. Johnson has no respect for the separation of powers granted by the highest authority, the Constitution. He has no respect for that and the authority of the justices and the people's court. I rest my case. I'm Renaldo McKenzie of the Nearly Around podcast. And that's on a quick note. That's the quick note, Donte.